Welcome everyone to Samudra Shakti Online. I'm glad that you are joining us for this presentation. So tonight we have Will Doran. He has had a rich life steeped in cross-cultural and diverse studies of religion and spirituality. Born into a Catholic family, Will was raised with a foundation of God consciousness. Through ritual and religious training, he was initiated into a world of spirituality and holds himself as an ongoing student of life. His parents were world travelers and open to discuss different worldviews and traditions. From this, he gained a curiosity towards the diverse way people experience God and form personal practices. As a teenager, Will's interest took him deeper into Christianity and the profound experience of Pentecostal worship. This deep connection to Christ consciousness, however, was overshadowed by human limitation. Experiencing a building disillusionment with the rigidity of discrediting all other belief systems and the imposing idea of a highly judgmental God, Will opened up to explore Buddhism and its path to remove suffering in this lifetime. He considers this a time of healing from too much God and not enough heart. As he aged, he fostered a growing interest in mysticism, Carlos Castaneda, Taoism, Native American indigenous spirituality, and eventually metaphysics. He found value in the way each of them approached the concept and understanding of God. It was when he was introduced to New Age philosophy that he deepened his experience and his experiential knowledge of power and energy, and how God was an ever-present reality experienced on multiple levels. This added to his background knowledge of Eastern thought and the practice of meditation. Will completed a 4-year course called Being the Higher Self and was initiated into the world of spiritual channels and multidimensional teachers. Over the years of constant reading, investigation, and practice, Will was drawn to study yoga, first as a way to heal various body issues. Then Will found it to be a powerful tool for grounding in the present moment and embodiment. He continued to explore many types of yoga and wrestled with the diverse views and techniques presented, often by teachers with what he considered little depth of study, especially in how to clearly present the diversity of yoga teachings to Westerners. Discovering Anusara Yoga was a huge mind and body and heart opener for Will. He found it unique in the way it brought in the play of spirit and grace into the physical action of alignment and movement. An introduction to non-dual Tantric philosophy through John Friend and Paul Mueller-Ortega opened his heart and blew his mind into new dimensions. It gave him exciting directions for going deeper into the teachings of Kashmir Shaivism and yogic metaphysics, including a life-affirming attitude towards living a spiritual life in the role of a householder. The Anusara community of scholars and teachers became the root for his current life practice of living as the higher self through service, devotion, and sharing his insights through teaching. Will remains a constant student of life, and he finds joy in the journey of bringing spirituality and practice into everyday experience. His studies transformed him from a seeker to a person focused on the qualities of being. Continued interest in quantum physics has added to his understanding of how we live in multidimensional realities as spirit, having a human experience. Will delights in sharing his insights and experiences as a certified Anusara yoga teacher and as a personal life coach. He shares his teaching and services on his website, theyogacoach.com, and on his YouTube channel. Welcome, Will, to Samudra Shakti Online.
Very good. So I am just delighted to be here, and I realize that the journey that I have been going on is something that all of us have gone through one way or the other. It's that journey of recognizing ourselves as limited beings, in this realm where we evolve and grow to something bigger and fuller, and what I've just learned to be calling, our highest self. Originally, I thought that this was something that was outside of myself, and through my studies, I realized that it's just another way of being who I am. One of the things that I found that is really a constant is that we are all caught in this pulsation of concealment and revelation. I've looked at it from a number of different levels and really actually realized that my journey and all of our journeys is, how do we get to the place where we live this highest dimension? How do we get to the point where we're authentically connected to who we are on so many different levels, and recognizing that not only is it our journey, but it is a shared universal journey, and we are all shaped, moved, and formed by so many different aspects. Our culture, time period, our age, what we're going through now in the time of the virus is just a very classic example of a pulsation that moves us into a depth of being so we can evolve into something that's bigger. And what I've learned in all of my studies, the diversity of it, is that there's very common templates. There are teachings that I want to go through that recognize that how they've influenced me, that they got me started on my deeper spiritual study, and that took me from my roots into the individual of who I am now. And I wanted to start with a recognition, and this is interesting because I'm crossing back and forth from my youth and the limited knowledge of what I was taught to learning ever expanding vocabulary of what I've gone through, what I've experienced. And so when I was born into a Catholic family, I had the very foundational part of being a spiritual being being taught to me as a very young individual. So I learned about prayer, ritual, higher dimensional beings in the form of saints and angels. And so I was very open to experience these dimensions. And I've learned more and more as I've gone through time that this evolution that took me eventually into a place of deep connection to the heart, of the love and the adoration and the worship of the divine, was a palpable experience that was just something that just blew my heart open and made it possible for me to really move forward in my growth. I had a number of problems with the teachers that were giving me basic governance, and so eventually I found that there was a pulsation of retraction. And I guess in one expression, it's called too much God on your mind. And so I found that all throughout my life, teachings evolved. They appeared before me. They presented themselves. And so when I was being very disappointed with, the teachings that were around me, I was delighted when a cousin introduced me to Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha. And that was the beginning of my love for Eastern philosophy, and in particular into Buddhism. And the study of the Eightfold Path as a way to move into living and working in a way that diminishes suffering and diminishes the pain that is so prevalent in just being a human being. So these guidelines that kind of took the 10 commandments of the Christian teaching and moved it into a whole nother way of really looking at how an individual, each and every one of us, can govern the way we are and how we act within the world. Eventually, as I moved into householder life, and realized that following the or the Buddhist master into the temple, into the forest, wasn't my journey. As I started, I wanted to become a Theravada teacher or a student in Thailand. At 18, I wanted to leave home and travel. And I ended up going to a different continent and became more of a specialist in Latin America, and studied and traveled in Latin America extensively. And came back from my travels, went to school, met my wife, and created a lovely family with our 2 children, here pictured as being youngsters, who now they're 27 and I believe 30 or 31. And so the journey that really was moving forward for me was being present. And the Zen teaching of just sitting was quite fundamental in my training. For a couple of years, I went with friends to gather in a small private zendo, and we would sit for 45 minutes staring at a wall, just being present. And that was the training that I believe really gave me the roots to be able to move into being present as a spouse, a parent, co-worker, and moving into my professional career as a computer specialist, and eventually to become a vice president of sales in a small local Seattle computer company. It was the sense of being present in the moment, whether it was making music or being in conversation in Mexico with someone in a different language. It was all this opening to be in that moment without expectations and judgments that I really believe that I gained from being a student of Buddhism. And so this pain that I had about having too much God thumped at me was relieved for quite a bit in this time of just being a Buddhist, just sitting, just meditating, just being the best I could. My life was really influenced by so many diverse cultures, and one of the key teachings that I really recognized was when I was about 20, I was given the gift of the book 7 Arrows by Hayao Storm. And it was the first teaching that really took me into the sense that life was a medicine wheel, a circle, and this shape with the crosses in there was kind of a guide that I later in yogic studies became very familiar with. And then in metaphysics and quantum physics started to see the same pattern of how an individual is born into the circle in the south to the place of innocence. And you look into the mirror to see who you are. And then you realize that the journey continues. And in the symbol of the medicine wheel, you journey at your own pace and your own proclivities into introspection, illumination, and wisdom. And all of those perspectives on the medicine wheel are mirrored out by the inner light. And so from this, we also realize that the 4 dimensions are a dimension of growth. And so they become the 5th dimension and the 6th dimension, above and below, and in the center, the heart. So again, this kind of sets the patterns that the 7 arrows of spirit are looked at in many different ways and are revealed through many different teachings. But ultimately, my study and my learning has taught me that everything is a journey to the heart and into that place where we realize that consciousness is everything, and it's mirrored and reflected out. And we're living like this beautiful picture of the human being in the torus, this energy shape that is so constant in the universe. And it is where the individual is being manifest into form and then finding its place into the bigger, more cosmic picture of things. And the whole adage of as above, so below is beautifully expressed, because this torus that is the energy field around our human being is also the same energetic field that surrounds our planet, that creates galaxies and creates clusters and super clusters in the universe. So the forces that are within us are all around us, and it's a journey of life to go to those key points, to look, to find, as Carlos Castaneda taught me early on, that there's power out there, and that we can learn to stalk that power and stalk ourselves and take the responsible role of evolving and growing to becoming whole and healthy individuals. When I was at the place where I wanted to go deeper into mysticism and spirit, and was finding that that lack of focus on Buddhism, the universe brought to me another teacher and a series of teachers that moved me deeper into metaphysics, New Age philosophy. And I list here that one of the most powerful teachers that brought me into a new understanding of the God that I had kind of rejected from my Catholic and Christian days, Dennis Adams, was a New Age teacher from the Shasta area in California. And he taught about his path of learning and teaching. And his words that really transformed me was to recognize that God is space, that whole ever presence, it means that we can find our own unique balance within that spaciousness that's everywhere, from the very micro to the macro, the very space that vibrates, that creates the flower of life symbol that you see here from unity consciousness. It splits and splits and splits until the wholeness of life is formed. And this teaching that comes from so many different cultural sources is so relevant on every level of who we are. My time at Rose Pearl was just a mind-boggling experience, because what I realize now is that deep training that I was going through was the training for who I am now, today. Many decades ago, when I was young and studying this level of philosophy and being given the gift of direct communication to non-corporeal beings as teachers and guides, I recognized that it was something that was deeply my path, but it was also something that kind of isolated me a little bit, because you could only talk to people at so deep a level for so long before eyes rolls and they start kind of like looking at their watches and wondering where else they're going to go. And so it was an individual journey I was on, but it was shared also with many people who I've seen surface in life as being the beautiful, inspiring teachers that we all get to share and enjoy, both in the Anusara yoga community and so many other communities that we are all working, teaching from our places, all being shaped and molded from so many different sources on that medicine wheel of life, that we, as we gain our insights and knowledge, we're bringing it and we're sharing it and we're making an impact in the world. My love for quantum physics was just kindled by a number of teachers. Nassim Haramein, a name who I strongly recommend you search out and see some of his teachings and videos. And he keeps growing and expanding with contemporary insights. How basically, how we're finding God in the presence of everything, and this unified sense of consciousness is going to be the most important teaching that's going to transform our science, our spirituality, the way we think of ourselves in the universe and the world. And I owe a great debt of gratitude to Nassim. And I was super delighted a couple of years ago to find the Gaia channel online, because Gaia is a diverse resource that has many other teachers, including Tantric teaching from Paul Mueller Ortega and Christopher Harish Wallace, as well as many wonderful metaphysical teachers and followers of conspiracy theories and the teaching that usually is hidden from us is available there, and you could find what really works for you and follow those threads. And the teachings on multidimensionality by Matthias de Stefano has just been one of the most profound teachings that has helped me to understand what dimensionality is. And I'll get into that a little bit later on as we proceed. The chakra systems, oh my. I've always considered the chakras as being one of the most profound roadmaps for us to follow on how we work from the very basic level where consciousness materializes in the form that we have in our body, and is transformed as we learn and grow through the stages of life, from being a newborn in a physical body, learning relationship with others, how to find our willpower and our energy to create, and then the journey that moves from those 3 base chakra levels up to our heart. How does that heart connection take us to that ascension ability here? I included one of my paintings, and I'll have a couple of those along, that was symbolizing that descension of energy and ascension of energy, and how it really is what centers us in this lifetime as limited beings as we blossom and move and grow. In a master's workshop with John Friend, he introduced me to the idea that the chakras are not linear, and they actually are connected spirals. And that really gave me a wonderful insight about how spirit at the crown connects to our embodiment at the basic level. And then we move intuitively towards the heart from not just the bottom, the base level, but spirit itself living as a human being. And that it brought me to the awareness that, you know, spirit and that which is beyond the physical form is not necessarily better or higher. It's just another vibration, another dimension. And we're given the gift through Maya to be in this limited consciousness, so we can really focus through duality to get to the place where the heart shines, and where we can live in that space where we can take who we are out into the world and be present in the world from our highest self. So this 7 chakra systems, along with 7 arrows, were like this beginning pattern of really recognizing that there are teachings out there that can guide us, and they're cross-cultural. This chart I want to go through quickly because it is the universe, and one cannot go too deep into understanding everything in the universe. So it's, you know, take a picture with your camera, folks, look at it later, and go to look at some of my notes online on my website, because this is a way for those of us who love to go into the deeper studies of the layers of what exists, from the very base elements up to the most supreme Paramashiva, where there are no boundaries, no limits, no separations. It's a way that over many generations, where the deep, deep thinkers of Kashmir Shaivism have created a roadmap that we can understand our place in the bigger picture, in the whole. So it is a study in itself, a lifetime. It is more than an hour and a half or 2, just a lecture just on this one page, but we won't go there. And many of us who have studied with Anusara teachers have taken delight in this depth that I really believe is to Anusara's credit. Is it goes to a deeper level for those of us who really want to be there. And if you don't want to be in that place of studying and analyzing, you don't have to. So one of the teachings that comes from Kashmir Shaivism, and which I consider as being one of the root teachings for non-dual Tantra that is so prevalent in Anusara and in my understanding of the world, utilizes a teaching coming from the Shiva Sutras. that recognizes, as did also when I studied the Bhagavad Gita, that there are many different personalities and temperaments, and we are following unique ways of understanding consciousness and the divine and our place in the bigger picture based on who we are. And so there are those of us who are clear and crisp in understanding the level of will and creation. Some of us are more oriented towards mind and going into how feeling connects us to the divine. And there are many of us who have the support of multiple different teachings that will allow us to practice yoga, to practice pranayama, breath controls and awareness, to be students, to practice the different levels of bhakti, jnana, and kriya yoga, the ways to journey into this wholeness that is represented by this beautiful image of Sri Yantra. Through sacred imagery, the yogis point out that consciousness descends into the material realm and ascends back into the higher realm of unity consciousness. From studying these different upayas, as we're taught by Abhinavagupta in the Shiva Sutras, is that I realized that we could also cross over. You know, one stage of our life, there may be one way of living, of perceiving, of study and practice. And then as I've grown and studied, I found more and more that there's a letting go. And this is when the seeker becomes the individual focused on being. And in that place where we're looking to experience the higher connections everywhere, to see how vibration moves, how thought pulses create, how our responsibility as being aware, moving from the heart, doesn't take us out of the realm of vulnerability, but just makes us wiser beings on navigating the wave patterns that rise and fall and give us this beautiful world of duality that teaches us how to find our own truth, going through our own levels of understanding, going through our own paths, and that we basically move into a place of spontaneous freedom. I love this sense where we can recognize that we are governed by society to a degree, but we're more governed by the higher awareness that we are spiritual beings exploring in this realm, learning how to be more authentically connected, spirit and human in equal balance. Physics, quantum physics, oh my goodness. Again, I want to credit Mateos de Stefano and this beautiful program, Initiation on Gaia, because it helped me to really understand this sense that though we are striving for unity consciousness, we don't always understand how that is created. And so going through the very basic level here of unity moves into a pulsation, what we call also spanda, this vibration moving back and forth, and then this desire to be something other than just one moves further and further away, and then it pulses back in like an echo upon itself. And that pulling back in comes up to create the third dimension. And in that third dimension, we have the space, the vibration that is us, that is the energy field for us to be and to experiment. But we have to have that fourth split of the polarities of negative and positive now becoming the fourth dimension of time. So in space and time, we get to go through all possibilities of existence, lifetime after lifetime, all the multiple possibilities. This is us being given the opportunity to be many, so that we could eventually come into this understanding of oneness. So when we move from space and time to another vibration, and this is moving towards a tetrahedron kind of shape, where we realize that above this field of play is the non-local space of a deeper wisdom and knowledge and awareness that is, to me, it's a place where love, wisdom, and will move us through evolution, moves us through co-creation. From this fifth dimensional place that is not bound by judgment, we're able to look down upon space and time in our behavior and to see, how is it working? This is the place where we get to observe, where are we going? How are we living to our highest values? How are we living in a place that can really reflect who we want to be on this journey, spiraling back in evolution to the higher consciousness awareness? So from non-judgmental love, we look down upon ourselves to understand. But in the realm of space and time, you need polarity to grow. And that's where the sixth dimension comes from. You know, between the high and the low, we're always pulsing back and forth into that place where we can realize that dark is not a pejorative thing. Dark is contrast. And the beings that are associated with darkness are not dark in the evil sense as much as the far majority of them. And I believe some are actually dark inside, but the far majority really are those forces that say, I am going to help you learn by stirring it up. I'm going to shake it up. And this goes from the personal level to the global level. So understanding that we are in these pulsing polarities is one of the ways I think that we could understand currently where we are, what have been the imbalances that have shocked us and moved us out of the place that we've been, to move us into deeper levels of growth, to move us into higher vibrations of being, to connect us deeper to ultimately what is living from the heart. And that the seventh level of love and heart is a beautiful place where we are the responsible, self-aware individual striving to be a non-judgmental being while we're going through the ups and downs, the vibrations of life. And one of the beautiful ways Mateus defined this is that there's these vibrations of who we are. We could be low vibrational beings or higher vibrational beings. And then when we raise our vibrations, whether it's by studying the chakra system and moving from our base self to our higher self, or studying dimensionality through physics, is that eventually our raising of the higher vibration, moving deeper and deeper in love, makes the vibrations of the highs and the lows closer together. So our transformation is shorter. The distance from one point to other is now diminished because we're high and low rather than long and drawn out. And so right now, we're all in this opportune space to raise the love, raise the vibration, and we will process and learn and go through the healing quicker. We have the choice not to prolong the suffering, the misery, the negativity. We have the choice in every dimension of who we are to raise the vibration, to take us to this another place of transformation. How do we get there? It's a lot, and it's not just our process. And that's why I was just so drawn to Anusara Yoga and the first principle of opening to grace, because it, to me, is opening the heart. And as this one painting of mine shows here, it's like we are a vessel receiving the light of spirit. We are here to be in the natural world. And the veil that separates us is really quite gossamer, really quite thin. And when we open and we move into this place of being alive and aware in consciousness, then we start to realize that we can balance out the forces of nature that are shaping us. The three forces of nature, the gunas that we learned in the Bhagavad Gita, talk so much about the fiery rajas and the heavy tamas, and this beautiful balance of sattva. But we also recognize that we need to be in all of those. If we did not have the heavy nature, we would never have the decaying away. We would always be in growth. we wouldn't have the pulsation of polarity that moves us to another place. Without the fire of rajas, we would be too dormant, we would be too inactive, maybe even complacent to be in a spiritual place. And that's one of the things that I really learned, that when I was deeply involved in my metaphysical studies, is that I was kind of losing contact with Earth. I was losing contact with the being in this lifetime, when I was going through deep meditations and contact with wonderful beings and living in this higher realm, and in a way forgetting that there's great growth and transformation that comes from being in this human form and in the life that we live. And ultimately, it is the hand of grace that guides us along and moves us through the transformation, moves us through the ups and downs, the peaks and valleys of life and experience. Ultimately comes down to the question, how do you live as the higher self? So when we come to some basic concepts that consciousness creates everything, that means that we have to recognize that we are that consciousness in our own unique form. And we all are given the opportunity to turn our beingness into Leela, or the divine play, the perspective that we can be as human beings, not outside of the realm of polarity, where we do suffer, we do have limitations, where we do have things that hold us back, that even the things that challenge us, such as being isolated in a quarantine, being in a place where you can have knowledge and yet the people around you don't want to hear it, or don't want to live by the insights, then it's a matter of dancing your own dance around others and embracing others for who they are, without any form of judgment, without any need for anyone, including myself, to be something or be achieving a goal. The goal itself is presence in the journey. So relationship, work, family life, love, service, yoga, art, music, creativity, spontaneity. These are the things that I've journeyed through in this realm of infinite potentiality and possibilities, just exploring and offering who I am at the highest level in every step. So who am I? My practices: teacher, musician, mantra, study, yoga, gardener, radical. I find that being my unique individual self has given me just this ever expanding field of play, to learn to go deeper into the teaching, to practice teachings that help me live as a spiritual being and aware human being. My recent studies of mantra have just been amazing for expanding my capacity as an individual to understand my role and my play in the bigger forces of life, and how there's a partnership that can be created, that the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth dimensional beings that are all around us are very interested in what we as human beings are doing as we are evolving through this incredible realm of feeling and experience, to be who we are, to follow the unique patterns, and to enjoy, even be a little bit of a rebel along the way. That's my presentation.